Now for Falcons Central, here's Aaron Freeman and Scott Carasik.
Fly high, Falcons, straight down the field. Fly high, Falcons, never to yield. Red and silver is Atlanta's team. When the game is over, you will reign supreme. Come on and fly.
Atlanta Falcons football is here once again. That's right. What's up?
Welcome everybody to the Falcons Central podcast. I forgot that we had the Fly High Falcon song to start out. I like that, but I forgot that we had that. That's awesome. I'm Scott Carasik.
I'm Aaron Freeman.
We got Aaron Freeman here as usual. We've got Asante Samuel coming on later today for the interview. Got a couple questions from the audience that are going to be answered as well. Now, going into more of the current events, Aaron, Arthur Blank just got $200 million from the NFL for his stadium.
Yeah, I saw that. It's a nice, sizable loan, I guess.
Well, you got to combine that with the $200 million he already got from the city of Atlanta / Georgia, state of Georgia. That's about $600 million below where he wants to be, though.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking there's either going to be a massive sponsorship or we're going to be stuck with the dreaded personal seat license, or PSL.
I think the PSLs are inevitable. I think it's all about how big they're going to be as opposed to whether they actually exist. I think Arthur Blank repeated attempts to duck that question at press conferences over the last couple of years kind of indicate that it's coming. It's just how big is it going to be? And they have to make up that $600 million gap. I can't imagine it's going to be a very small price tag on those PSLs.
Well, I mean, just looking at it, if the stadium, and this is, undershooting, of course, say the stadium can hold 60,000 people. Say your average PSL is about $1,000. That's about $60 million that they would have at $1,000 average. You're going to need more than that. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
So unless Arthur Blank is contributing a lot of his own money, like $400 million plus, and they're getting a massive sponsorship from someone like Coca-Cola for permanent naming rights. I mean, if they get like $200 million from Coca-Cola, I don't think there's going to be PSLs at all. And if Arthur Blank can do that, that would be ridiculous. I don't think any fan would have any issue going to Coca-Cola Stadium if they didn't have to pay for a PSL.
Yeah, I would agree with you. As for, to be clear, Arthur Blank really isn't contributing his own money because it's coming out of the fans' pocket some way or the other, his money is the fans' money, I guess you could say. So, we'll see what happens. I hope, I guess we should preface this by saying I am not a season ticket holder of the Falcons.
I'm not either. But I got a lot of friends who are.
Yes, I do, as I do too. And it's stadiums aren't free, so it's going to hit somebody in the pocket somewhere along the line. So I don't envy people when it comes to certain financial decisions that they'll have to make in the next 3 or so years.
I mean,
but
it's one of those it is what it is kind of situations.
Yeah.
But at least the design of the stadium's going to look good.
You got segue. Yeah, I did. They did pick a designer. I guess they had 5 finalists, and then they picked a winner, I guess, so to speak. And I believe it's the winner, the person who's the firm that's going to be designing the stadium is the same firm where those early concept, the Pantheon and the Solarium that were seen on the internet a couple of weeks ago. They are the ones that ended up winning the bidding, I guess, or whatever, to design the new stadium.
I think the concepts, though, we're not going to see either one as the actual stadium. I think we're going to see a third, not completely different, but pretty different concept. It may look like the Pantheon and open up like the Solarium. Or,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. I feel like the Pantheon design is very similar to the house that Jerry built. So, do we want that?
It's going to be interesting to see, because I read somewhere where the Pantheon design does have a lot of buzz behind it. From, I read an article earlier today where the chairman of the Georgia War Congress Center basically specifically mentioned that design as one of the ones that he was excited about. So, I figure we'll see some, at least at the very minimum, some of the elements of that design in the new stadium when it's built.
I think the actual external frame is probably what the outside's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that. I think that a little bit of the inside bowl will be the same, but I think that they're going to change it a little bit, because I like the idea where it's got the expandable from the Solarium. I think they're going to try and incorporate that into more of that into the actual design for the Pantheon. But both stadium designs are great. Either way, fans should be ecstatic. Although, if you see some of the designs that the other guys did, I kind of like one of the other ones better, but it's more of a traditional design. It's kind of like an egg-shaped, it's more, how do I put this? It's like an egg-shaped type design, but it's just a bank of windows looking right at the city. And there's very few seats on that one side, and it's pretty much a U-shaped stadium with a glass wall. I think that's awesome.
I was just going to say, I did like some of the other designs. There was one that had a yin-yang sort of configuration. There was the one that, it seemed like it was like the roof was made out of windows, which was, I thought was pretty interesting. Kind of had this, I can't even describe it. And then there was another one that was kind of, seemed to me like a spaceship. It's kind of like all white type of deal. I thought they were pretty cool.
Yeah, they both looked. Thing is, any of the options, any of the designers, you've got an excellent stadium plan, no matter who you pick. I just found it to be interesting that the Falcons got the NFL funding, and I don't think they were planning on it either. I don't think they were expecting to get this funding. I think they were expecting to have to fight and claw for it. First vote, they got it, which is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Normally that does not happen. Normally it takes 5, 6, 7 votes for these guys to even get any sort of funding. So maybe Arthur Blank has a little more pull than we think he does.
Yeah, perhaps. I think he is probably one of the more, I guess, higher profile owners in terms of kind of his visibility among other owners. He's not Jerry Jones by any means, but you do see Arthur Blank, probably a bit more than your average NFL owner. And I think that has some weight, as, maybe people in that room consider him one of the ambassadors of the league.
I agree with that. He's definitely one of the better owners out there. He's definitely one of the better owners out there. It's just, how do I put this? He's not Jerry Jones because he's not going to let somebody tell him, or he's not Jerry Jones in that he's not going to make people think that he's running the team in every single aspect. He's more of just a business manager that runs that side of the team.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad he doesn't have his hand in the cookie jar too much with the football side of things. He just wants guys that are going to help in the community, which no matter who your owner is, you kind of want them to want that from their players.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think earlier on he was probably more kind of that hand in the cookie jar, but considering that he just spent, what was it, like $560 million on a new team, if I had spent that type of money, I would kind of be a little bit more involved in the day-to-day managing of that. But I think
I would have been worse.
Yeah, and so, but since they hired Thomas Dimitroff and Mike Smith, and he's had Rich McKay, now for almost a decade. I think he's more open on, letting the football people do the football stuff, and the business people do the business stuff, and he's more of a I can't think of someone who's the visionary, I guess, to kind of guide everybody along to what he wants for the future, as opposed to trying to micromanage.
He's Arthur the soothsayer, not Arthur the owner.
Yeah, I guess that's a nice way of putting it.
He's the man in charge who just makes sure that nobody screws up his money.
Yeah.
But Mafia Don, Uncle Arthur.
Yeah.
Oh man, I would love to get Thomas Dimitroff on the show and just be like, "Hey, comrade, how's everything going?"
I would just be if we had Dimitroff on the show, I would be very curious to see what sort of word combinations he could come up with, because he does come up with some interesting ways of expressing, some novel ideas, like urgent athleticism and stuff like that. So I'm sure we could draw something unique and special out of him.
Like the added explosiveness that we needed after the 2011 loss to the Giants, or not 2010 loss to the damn Packers. Oh, that was such a horrible game.
Yeah.
I still say, had Michael Jenkins not fallen on that touchdown, like had he not fallen in the end zone and at least knocked it away from an interception, that game would have been completely different. I feel like that one play changed that entire season for both teams. I
would agree with you. Yeah.
And it was such a horrible play. Such a horrible play. Because up until that point, it was like, I want to say, it wasn't like 14-0, but it was not 14-0. It was like 14-14 up until that play.
Yeah, and I think we were driving, either we had the lead or we were driving to extend the lead or something like that.
It was 3rd and 21 from their 26 is what it was, and it was tied 14-14. If Michael Jenkins knocks that ball away, it's a 43-yard field goal for Matt Bryant. Come on now. We know he's going to make that.
Yeah. Well, the other factor on that whole series was, I think it was Harvey Dahl that got the penalty before that, which kind of forced the Falcons to have to try to throw it downfield. I think they were like a 3rd and 5 or something.
No, Dahl got a sack.
Oh, okay, that's what it was. Okay, I just remember Dahl messing up, and it kind of put us in a predicament where we were in that situation where Matt Ryan took that shot at the end zone as opposed to maybe a little bit more conservative play that wouldn't have involved Michael Jenkins and his uncoordinatedness.
But I kind of like Michael Jenkins up until that one play. And that one play, they were like, yeah, we need somebody who can go up and get that ball.
Yeah, I mean, I think Michael Jenkins got probably a tougher rap than he deserved in Atlanta, but I do think for the most part, most people were aware of his limitations. And, the Falcons are better for it now. I guess we could all agree on that.
Now, don't get me wrong. I would love to have him back.
I would too.
He's
I'm pretty sure he's going to
agent.
get cut by the Patriots, so we'll get that opportunity at the end of camp.
Wouldn't he be great to have back as a fourth wide receiver, especially since, right now the current fourth best wide receiver on the team is Drew Davis or Kevin Cohn or Tim Toon. Again, not exact, great with alliteration, but not on the football field.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to see Michael Jenkins come back in a Brian Finneran role.
Yeah, I think that's what he is at this point in his career.
That's what he was at every point in his career.
Yeah.
he was Brian Finneran. And don't get me wrong, I love Brian Finneran. I'd love to get Brian Finneran on this show because, he's a radio show in Atlanta now. He's awesome.
Yes.
But, I mean, let's be honest here. That's what Michael Jenkins was. Was he worth a first-round pick? No. Brian Finneran went undrafted, but if it came to today, he'd be a third or fourth round pick if people knew what his career would have turned out like. He was a solid possession receiver. He was one of the most reliable possession receivers out there for a good 8 to 10 years. I would take him on the team with a third or fourth round pick as, the third or fourth best wide receiver on my team for years. The problem is that Michael Jenkins was always the third or fourth best wide receiver on the team, and the third best receiver may not have been, or the second best receiver was either Harry Douglas or, Tony Gonzalez or somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and then
I agree.
And if Harry Douglas doesn't have an ACL injury in 2009, how good is that team?
Yeah, I do wonder about Harry Douglas's, career path. How much that ACL, revered it to the left or the right or whatever. And had he stayed healthy that year, because he finished the 2008 season pretty strong, past Finneran. And I was kind of expecting him to start pushing Jenkins for that starting job in 2009. As the team was looking to get someone who's a little bit more explosive, more dynamic into the offense, and then he tears his ACL and, disappears for a year and then comes back in 2010. And
he's just okay.
Yeah, and he's never really, obviously you could debate whether or not, the hype was worthwhile, but you never know. It's the same thing with Parade Jerry, had he not injured his knee, how good of a player would he have become?
Those first two games, he looked like a mini Warren Sapp for a little bit, but after a while, I just wanted to be like, God damn it, Parade, just figure out the hole and stuff it.
Yeah.
It's like, sorry, I'm going to use a dodgeball quote. It's like two monkeys humping a doorknob. Get it together. I feel like Patches O'Houlihan sitting there when I watch Parade Jerry, you're a fifth-year pro. Get it together. You're not making any sense here. What the hell, Parade? Damn it. You're not supposed to let this guy block you out of a play. He's half your size. It's practice. Quit letting Jacquizz Rodgers knock you over. Now, I will say, I'm excited to see how James Rodgers does this year.
Yeah.
Because I think if there's one guy who could possibly duplicate what a Welker does, it's him.
Yeah, and, the interesting thing about James Rodgers is he's another player that had he not gotten hurt while he was at Oregon State, where would he be right now? I think he certainly was on a path to be, I don't know if he would have been Tavon Austin, but certainly a guy
he would have been drafted as high as his brother at least.
Yeah, just a guy that teams would have looked at and said, okay, he's not the traditional, type of receiver, but he has that dynamic ability that he can do a lot of things and help out on special teams, and would have been a drafted player and would have been in a position where, he could have contributed early on the team as opposed to, spending the last year or two trying to rehab a knee injury and, losing some of what made him that great player at Oregon State, which was his explosiveness. So, injuries do affect things. And I think sometimes they can be a little bit overrated, as in the case with a certain former Minnesota Viking defensive end that played for the Falcons. But
yeah, Ray Edwards does not deserve to be mentioned by his name. We're going to call him the boxing underwear model from now on. Yeah.
But, injuries do factor in with some players, especially players when you have, when the key element of your game is how explosive you are. And I do think Harry Douglas has gotten back a lot of that explosiveness from his injury, and hopefully we'll hear, James Rodgers has done the same. But, it's always, those what-if questions. I don't know if they keep me up at night, but they certainly make for interesting fodder on the internet and, blogs and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, going with a non-injured guy, Rashad Evans out of Fresno State could have been an interesting one. I thought he was a pretty good player, and I'm kind of shocked that he didn't get picked up. Or even Darius Johnson out of Southern Methodist. Or even Martell Moore out of Northern Illinois. All three of those guys I was impressed with. So for the Falcons to get all of them, I had, 5th, 6th, 7th round grades on these guys. I'm shocked they didn't even get drafted because they're better than where they're at. They're better than undrafted free agents. But it just goes back to the whole, I don't think all the NFL teams always get it right, or I don't think all the NFL teams always get it wrong either. There's a medium. There's going to be some guys that I'm just completely off on because there's too many variables. The right situation, I think for a wide receiver, if you want to be on a playoff team, the right situation for you to go to is Atlanta because you only have to beat Drew Davis and Kevin Cone. They aren't super hard. They aren't super entrenched. They aren't super invested in. Yeah, they may have been on the practice squad for a year and then on the roster for a year, but they're not these world-beating 2nd and 3rd round picks that have a ton of investment in them. It's not, even if they were a 7th round pick, I feel like they'd have more investment and more pull because Atlanta likes to keep a hold of their, 6th, 7th, 5th round guys, let them develop a little bit, So it's kind of shocking when they trade any sort of pick, which they had 2 trades this year. And then when they traded up, got rid of a 6th. That was nice. Got rid of a 6th, got rid of a 3rd for Desmond Trufant to pair with last year's 7th round pick, technically. That's what I'm going to call him because he's one of Atlanta's 7th round picks from last year. And Asante Samuel. And now we're back into cyclical motion. Said we're going to have an interview with Asante Samuel.
He's a recent graduate of Central Florida, University of Central Florida. Asante was, as many people are probably aware, a lot of times football players will, midway through their senior years, stop focusing on a school and more start gearing towards the NFL draft. And, they don't always finish their schooling. And Asante is one of several players that now can call himself a college graduate because he did go back to school to earn his degree in interdisciplinary studies. And
interdisciplinary studies. I went and I looked up what kind of makes it up at Central Florida. It's things like African American studies and environmental sciences. It's just like a good combination of multiple things that are useful. It sounds like he could have picked and chosen the classes that he felt was most useful to him at any point, which is probably a smart idea. He might have been like, hey, I want to take an accounting class, and hey, I want to take a philanthropy class, not philanthropy, but like how to manage, like a money management class, and hey, maybe I want to take a public speaking class and this class and that class, to where he's got like the perfect degree for what he wants to do with it. So it's not actually like it's not a super focused degree. It's more of like a liberal arts, putting it all together kind of degree.
Yeah.
The way that I understand it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much how I understand it. I don't know if he had courses on Eli Manning or Drew Brees or anything while he was there, but I think those certainly.
I think he could write them today.
Yeah, maybe. I think he could tenure.
Very true. Well, anyway, without further ado, here's our exclusive interview with Asante Samuel on Falcons Central Radio. All right. First thing I wanted to say was congrats on the degree from Central Florida. Golden Knight, like one of my best friends from high school. So congrats on that, and education is definitely huge.
Yes, thank you.
Richard Sherman has been kind of going off, saying that he's the best corner in the NFL right now. I'm gonna hit you with this. Do you think he's the best corner in the NFL?
I mean, I only worry about myself. I'm the best in the NFL, so I can't speak for nobody else.
We've got a couple of fan questions as well, so I'm gonna go ahead and get a couple of these knocked out. One of them is, who is the best coach you've ever worked with?
The best coach I ever worked with. You mean all my life? You mean NFL?
All your life.
I would have to say Gene Chizik.
Really?
Yes.
Where did he coach you at?
Central Florida.
Central Florida?
Yeah, when I just started playing defensive back.
Because he's mainly known as an offensive coach, so was he your defensive coordinator, or?
Yeah, he was our defensive coordinator and defensive back coach.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting name, because he was that. Aaron, you got a couple questions?
This is Aaron Freeman.
All right.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions. A lot of them kind of centered on your role and responsibility with mentoring the young quarterbacks. Do you feel like you have a responsibility to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I look upon myself as a leader, and I'm very knowledgeable about the game, so I'm sure guys will want to pick my brain and whatever. So yeah, I think I take on that responsibility.
Okay. And a couple of fans had maybe some specific questions about some of the young guys. The Falcons drafted 2 corners in Desmond Trufant and Robert Alford, and some other young guys like Robert McLean and Peyton Thompson. Could you share, some brief opinions about some of those guys?
Well, yeah, I just sum it up in all of them. All the guys that you name are fast, explosive, and can attack the ball. So, that's the main thing you want, in my opinion, in a cornerback. So, you try your best to make it a no-fly zone. I like that. No-fly zone. Got the military feel to it. So how is it playing in a secondary with 2 Pro Bowl safeties covering your back? How do you feel like these rookies are going to fit in well with, Robert McLean, with you, with Thomas Dakoud, and with William Moore? Sum that question up again for me. Sum it up.
Basically, do you feel like these 2 rookies fit that fast, high-flying style that the secondary? Do you feel that these rookies will fit into the fast, high-flying style that the Falcons have tried to show the past year under Coach Nolan?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, those guys that they're good in the backfield. They attack the ball. They go get the ball. You know what I mean? they're fast, explosive. So I think they'll do well, and it's exactly what the coaches and the staff expect of them.
Okay. And Asante, what do you think of the expectations for the defense this year in 2013? Since most of the starters have had a year in the system, and are you expecting big improvements?
Well, yeah, most definitely. We made some nice moves in the offseason, in my opinion. We definitely made some nice draft picks, and my personal goal, I would love to be top 5 defense in the league. So. Okay.
And do you have any personal goals? Like statistical, or I guess part of the question I want to ask you is what sort of are you motivated by to perform at the highest level?
Well, motivation is first of all, my mom. My mom loves to watch me do this. Accolades and I talk about the accolades, and I can talk about money and all that stuff that motivates me, which it does. But I don't want people to twist things up and say that I'm selfish or this and that. Because when you're doing good to earn money for yourself, you're obviously doing good and helping your team. You know what I mean? So it all fits together. Personal accolades. You know what I mean? If I'm doing all that, I'm definitely doing things to help my team win.
2 people asked me about, matchups, and one fan asked, what's the toughest receiver to face line up against in the NFC South, and, another fan asked, who was the toughest that you've ever had to line up against?
Well, the toughest battles I ever had and the guy I lined up with was the toughest to me was Marvin Harrison. Marvin Harrison, Peyton Manning connection. It was definitely a battle, and we had our battles, and we fought hard, we fought good.
Okay.
And recently you said NFC South?
Yes.
I'm not really sure, man. That one's kind of up for grabs.
Okay. Yeah, I know Steve Smith's been doing it for a long time, so I imagine he's pretty tough.
Right.
The Falcons drafted Kamal Ishmael out of UCF. Do you feel any personal obligation, because you both guys came from the same school, that you may have to help him out a little bit more than, say, just any other person from another school?
No, just because we go to the same school won't have nothing to do with it. Like I said before, I answered the last question. I take it upon myself as a leader and a role model. So.
Okay.
Now, as far as the defense is concerned, who else do you think is going to step up as a leader, say, on the defensive line with John Abraham possibly not returning? Well,
I haven't played with the new guys. I haven't played with the new guys yet and the rookies, but I consider all of us are leaders, in our own way. So, everybody will have to step up and lead in their own way and make it work.
Asante, you had 2 of the more seminal moments of the 2012 season with the Falcons. Your pick six against Oakland sort of basically won us the game, and you had that interception on the opening plays against the Giants, and that was a big part of us, the Falcons. I say we too much, but Falcons winning that game. Is a lot of that just kind of preparation, or is a lot of it just kind of more being in the right place at the right time to make plays like that?
No, like I said, the game is, I have slowed the game down, to myself, and it's just like I said, it has a lot. All the entities have to do with it. The off-season training, the watching film, the mental studies, and just believing in yourself, and most of all, having confidence.
Looks like that's about the time that we've got. Thanks for coming on, Asante. We appreciate it. We hope to have you on again real soon, hopefully during one of the rivalry weeks, at the Saints, or maybe even when we play the 49ers.
All right, sounds good.
That was our exclusive interview with Asante Samuel. We really appreciate Asante coming on with us on our second episode of Falcons Central Radio. You can find Asante on Twitter. His username is @pick_622, and we really appreciate Asante coming on and talking to us.
That we do. It's he's always been one of my favorite players. So when Atlanta brought him in last year, it was like, oh hey, we've got arguably one of the best cornerbacks of this generation. That's pretty awesome. I just kind of wish that he had 22 pick sixes, so the number would fit even better, you know? Because it can't be like pick 6-6. Then it's like, oh, you're just 1-6 away.
Yeah.
But
well, he got a pick 6 when it mattered in that Oakland Raiders game, so
that was awesome. I was at that game. It exploded. It was amazing. Ironically, that's the game that Ray Edwards bought tickets, put the contest out, and I won those tickets from him. But yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. We're not going to mention that again.
No, I think we should bring it up every week.
I think we should bring up the Asante Samuel pick 6 every week. I'll agree with that. I want to see a couple of those in the playoffs. That'd be great. But he's going to lead these new corners. It will be interesting to see how they progress, since they do have a pair of safeties that could cover their ass. They've got a pair of corners who've been in the scheme for a year, who understand it. Robert McClain may only be a third-year guy, but you know, he's got leadership to him. Asante is definitely a leader. So, I mean, you've got a pair of guys in the secondary who I think will do really well together in Asante Samuel and Desmond Trufant. I just don't know if Samuel will line up as the left corner or if he'll follow the number 2 or the number 1 guy. Because I feel like Trufant's got this potential to be a Champ Bailey-style shutdown guy and take out the number 1 receiver. And as much as I like Samuel, I don't think he's that guy. I think he's more of that sit back, make plays on the ball, go after it, and get it kind of guy. He's not as much of the, I'm going to lock down the best receiver in football every single play. Mm-hmm. Now, neither one of them are going to be that guy this year, just because that's never been Samuel's game, and that's, you know, Trufant's a rookie. Now, if Trufant can do that this year, Atlanta's defense is going to be damn near close to dominant.
Yeah.
I just don't see it happening right this second.
Yeah. You know, Asante talked about, you know, wanting to have the defense be a top 5 unit. And, you know, I think he's definitely one of the top playmakers. You know, I think you could make the argument that he is the top playmaker on the defense. You know, I think probably before that you probably would have put him or John Abraham. But, you know, obviously only one of those players is still with the Falcons. You know, I thought it was interesting that Asante talked about leadership and, you know, helping to guide some of the young guys, because he's looking around at that secondary, you know, and last year he had Dante, and now, you know, he's going to have these rookie guys. And it's going to be interesting because, you know, a lot of Asante's success, I believe, in the past has been, you know, built on this reputation of, you know, this guy who makes you pay if you throw it to his side of the field. You know, he's one of the highest, you know, ranking guys on the active interceptions list. I think he has 50 career interceptions. And now that he has 2 rookies across from him, you know, teams are going to try to test those guys. So he may not have as many opportunities this upcoming season to make as many big plays. So it's going to be interesting to see, you know, how that affects his production, and, you know, is he going to be, you know, the guy who makes the plays when it, you know, even despite having a limited number of targets?
I feel like he may not be picked on as much early, but once teams kind of start to realize that Desmond Trufant's no joke, you know, that Robert McClain is no joke, they're going to kind of shift it back to Asante. Mm-hmm. And, you know, even though I love the way he plays on the field, he'll allow him to catch the ball every now and again, and he'll just make the tackle. That's what a cornerback's supposed to do sometimes. But he's just not that shut-down corner.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a great corner. I think he's a playmaking corner. I would have loved to see what he could have done with him and Grimes on the field as opposed to him and Robinson, because I think Robinson sucks. They
I agree. You're not going to get disagreement from here.
I mean, they should have just cut him before last season and gone with Grimes and been like, hey, we've got an open competition for nickel.
Mm-hmm.
I would have been much happier with that. And, maybe Franks wins it to start out with and then gets burned and, okay, whatever. And then, McLean wins it. Or Owens wins it shockingly.
Mm-hmm.
Or they get it to where, say, Owens wins it to where Owens covers the third best receiver in a nickel package on the field. And maybe Grimes is in the slot. But that would have been better than Robinson on the field. Because Robinson was horrible. And he was horribly overpaid. He didn't deserve them.
I agree.
They could have saved the headache cap-wise. But that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, I was a big fan of Brent Grimes. I don't know how exactly you felt on it, but I'm a big fan of corners that have ball skills, and Asante is one of the elite corners in the league when it comes to that. I thought Grimes was excellent at that as well. Because
I love Grimes. I did not like his wife.
Okay, all right. Yeah, it's just because we play. This is a passing league, and we have this era of passing that's headlined by a lot of great quarterbacks, and you can't be this sort of the Nnamdi Asamoah model, which is I'm a quote unquote shutdown corner because you don't throw to my side of the field. I think you have to be more that if you're going to be that guy, and there are very few guys like that, you have to be that Del Revis is, I'm so good you won't throw to my side of the field, but when you do, I'm going to make a play, So
yeah.
I think, if you can only choose one of the two to have, I think the ball skills and the guys that can make plays like Asante or Grimes or, who I believe Trufant and Alfred had the, ability and potential to be, as well as McLean, that's the type of guy that you want to have, because when you don't have, if you can't rely on your pass rush, then you have to rely on the guys on the back end to make plays. And I think the Falcons, including the safeties, have done a good job getting guys that can do that.
I think the safeties are better at it than the corners right now. But I think if you've got a guy who can be that next Revis, can be that next Champ Bailey, because Champ Bailey, he may not have caught every ball that went his way, but he knocked them away.
Mm-hmm.
It was more of a he couldn't catch as well than he just wasn't good. Like he wasn't good at he didn't have ball skills, I should say. It wasn't that he didn't have ball skills, it was that he couldn't catch. Now, how much of a void will Brent Grimes leave? Probably not as much as people think. He only played one game last year. So, does it suck that he's gone? A little bit, but I think Alford, best case scenario, long term, he'll be that good mix of Grimes and Samuel, and he can play a long-term right corner for 10 years. And then on the left side, you have a long-term Desmond Trufant for 10 years. And Asante Samuel plays his contract out and retires a Falcon, teaching these guys how to play for the next 2 years. That's what I think is the plan. The plan. And I think the plan is also to keep Robert McLean as long as they can, too, because after spending so long trying to find a decent nickel, he just magically shows up.
Yep. And magic is the right way to put it, because he was kind of, a bubble guy on the roster. I think, you probably could say that it came down to him with Dominique Franks as like the last spot on the roster, and McLean winds up getting it. They end up bringing Franks back, but it seems like it was this close. People can picture the tiny margin of error that McLean wouldn't have been would have been playing for I don't know, the Titans or something last year, and we wouldn't have gotten the best nickel cornerback we've had in in a very long time.
Do you know what I said about him last year coming in for the job? He had an uphill battle for the spot, and he could end up in the first round of cuts during the preseason. That's what I said about him.
Yeah.
I was wrong.
Yeah. I'm
glad that I was wrong, because I think that he's probably the second best corner they have right now. And that's not even saying, like, if Trufant is who I think he is, he's going to be the best corner on the roster.
Yeah, but, if the season started tomorrow, who would you rather, trust to have on the team or starting at that spot? And I would agree that, Robert McClain is the best option right now.
I mean, I don't know if I would start Robert McClain, though. Like, I think he's a good corner, but I feel like another reason why they took two corners so early in the draft is because they feel like McClain could start, if need be, on the outside, and they could put Alford in the slot and still have three really talented corners if either Trufant or McClain goes down, or Trufant or Samuel goes down. I don't think they like Franks as much as we like Franks. I could honestly see Peyton Thompson earning the roster spot.
Yeah, I think after Samuel, McClain, I think it's fairly certain that Samuel, Trufant, and Alford are locks. I think McClain is about as close as a lock as you can get. He would have to have, one of the most nightmarish, preseasons, considering how good he was last year, to not make this team, which, I have no expectation that will happen. But, I think after those four guys, it's a wide open competition with, Franks being the incumbent, Terrence Johnson also being in the mix. He does have experience playing with the Colts, Peyton Thompson.
See, Terrence Johnson is that same feel that I get from Robert McClain. Like, I don't think he's going to do anything. Like the same feel that I got from Robert McClain last year. I don't think he's going to do anything, and then he might magically be good.
Yeah.
I
know what you mean. So, when we cut Franks, I was like, last year, I was like, what are they doing? Why are they keeping this Robert McClain guy? He didn't do anything. He's not any good. And then, Franks has proven himself, the previous season, and then, of course, shut my mouth a couple of weeks later. But, now with these other guys, now that we've had a guy like Robert McClain kind of shock everybody, it's kind of like, I'm a little bit more reluctant to write off anybody as I probably would have been last year.
Exactly. I can't just be like, this guy's not going to do good. Because it's like, that's the guy that's going to be great. And I'm going to be like, man, what in the world? Who would have thought this guy was going to be good?
Yeah, Brent Grimes was an example of that. Who is this Brent Grimes dude?
Nobody would have picked Brent Grimes out. For years, I was like, man, they're just going to cut him. He's just here for camp fodder.
Yeah.
He's just here for camp fodder. He got sent to NFL Europe with 3 different coaching staffs. 3 different coaching staffs had him on the roster, and then he started in 2008. He was the starting cornerback then.
Mm-hmm.
He just wasn't
got benched,
good.
And then it was he's done. He had his opportunity.
He's done. He's not in the NFL anymore. He's 27 years old, 28 years old. What kind of future opportunity does this guy have? Nope. Wrong about that.
Yeah.
Bust out late in 2009. You knew he was a starter in 2010. Even if,
I still thought Chris Owens was going to win the job in 2010. It was like three, 4 straight years where I was doubting Brent Grimes. Like, yeah. He's had his nice little run, but, eventually he'll fall back to earth. And then
the thing that pisses me off about that whole situation is Dante Robinson said the entire time, oh, I wanted to play in the nickel when I was with Atlanta in 2010 and 2011, but Brian Van Gorder wouldn't let me. Well, Grimes would have played anywhere. Grimes didn't care. He just wanted to be on the field. So why not put Owens in at left corner where he actually did well? Because he sucked at it as nickel.
Yeah.
Even in any scheme, he sucked as a nickel. But when he came in last year, he was playing left corner, and he did fine. The guy is a left corner. Why not let him play that? I could see Cleveland, the team that signed him this year, I could see Cleveland magically getting the starting caliber corner out of him just by playing him on the right side.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I agree. You know, every time Owens has been an outside corner, he's been anywhere between competent and good. When you put him in the slot, not so much. The polar opposite, I guess, of competent.
Not at all.
But you know, I think I've heard a lot of Falcons fans kind of negative on Chris Owens, but you know, I liked what he did. You know, he wasn't a guy that complained about playing in the slot. You know, he stepped up when the team asked him to do it. Sometimes they didn't have better options. You know, I think he was one of our best gunners on special teams, which is an underrated skill when you can help control field position. You know, I'm disappointed that he won't be back in Atlanta, but, you know.
I would have rather had him than Dom Franks. I'll put that out there.
I'll second that. You know,
You
he
know,
was the fifth corner this year behind the four guys that I talked about earlier. You know, I think that would be, you know, he'd be the best fifth corner in the league.
By far.
Yeah.
You know, way by. And then you could move Franks to a more natural position for him, which I think is probably cut. I mean, I don't know. Now, if you had like one position that say you just didn't like on this team, one spot that's kind of worrisome that you're like, hey, maybe we need somebody to step up, otherwise we're screwed this year, where would you say that is?
I don't know if I could pick just one. Like, I'm going back and forth in my head between the two positions. I'm thinking offensive tackle and I'll just go with offensive tackle. It's not to say that I'm a little nervous because I don't know which Sam Baker's going to show up this year. Is it going to be the 2012 Sam Baker? If so, I'm happy with that. Is it the pre-2012 Sam Baker? Then that's the problem. And, you know, with Lamar Holmes, I have confidence that Lamar Holmes will be fine as a starter, but, you know, he's an unproven commodity at this point in time. So, you know, I don't want to see the Falcons in a situation where they have two tackles that are struggling, I guess.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the only two games last year that Sam Baker really had any trouble were Arizona and San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it wasn't even in pass blocking that he got beat. It was in run blocking. I mean, like, yeah, he got beat by DeMarcus Ware a couple times, but who doesn't get beat by DeMarcus Ware?
Yeah.
You know? DeMarcus Ware is just a beast. I wish we had him on the roster. You know? A lot of teams wish they had DeMarcus Ware on the roster. A lot of teams wish they had a guy like Von Miller or any of these other beasts like Cameron Wake.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of hoping that we develop the Cameron Wake, or we luck into a Cameron Wake type guy, and either Stanley Mapanga or, you know, Malachi Goodman. Although I think Goodman's going to be more of like a Justin Tuck type, but you know, even if I'm a huge Cameron Wake fan, I think he's the best defensive end in football. In a 4-3, I think he's better than John Abraham by far. If Atlanta feels that Massaquoi or Mapanga or any of these guys can be a Cameron Wake clone, they should trust Mike Nolan in that one. Now, is it gonna happen for sure? I don't know. Probably not. You know, knowing the Falcons' luck, we're looking at waiting a year, having OC be okay for a year, and then going downhill from there. But as Falcons fans, we're used to abuse.
So, would you be pretty worried about the defensive end position?
For me, I'm more worried about defensive end than I am about offensive tackle.
Okay.
Like, I think that the size, the quickness, the overall line itself is going to be better this year because you're going to have guys playing in more of their natural spots. I think Mike Johnson's a natural right guard.
Mm-hmm.
I think Lamar Holmes, he can play either tackle. I think he's one of those guys that naturally can play either left or right. So whoever you want to keep is fine. And I feel like the Falcons felt the same way. Otherwise, they wouldn't have let Tyson Clabo go.
Mm-hmm.
I trust in the Baker-Blaylock combination that's been in Atlanta since 2008. They know each other. They've got chemistry. They do pretty well together. You know, if Baker can show up and be the same guy he was last year, I would take him every year for the next 5. No issues. I think he'd be worth every penny they paid him because they didn't even pay him that much compared to other top tackles. Not a problem. But when it comes to the center, the right guard, the right tackle, I feel like Cons at center can work. Hawley at center can work. I'm cool with either guy there. I'm cool with either Cons or Johnson or Reynolds at right guard. I'm even cool with Reynolds if they want to put him at right tackle. You know, I think overall they've got the players on the line. They've got the guys they've drafted. I don't think Philip Keith Manley deserves to start. But there's definitely the talent there, at least for a long-term backup. So I'm more interested in defensive end. I think defensive end's the bigger weak spot. When you've got, you know, O.C. Menioria and Troy Bierman are your only proven commodities. After that, you know, you got Massaquoi, you got Goodman, you got Matthews, so it's there.
Okay. All right. You play devil's advocate on offensive tackle, so I guess I can play a little bit of defensive end. You know, defensive end is one of those positions that has a lot of question marks, but, you know, I think Corey Bierman is a player that gets probably a worse rap than he deserves. You know, I don't think he's the world's greatest pass rusher. I don't think anybody would dispute that, but I do think he's a better overall football player than a lot of people give credit for. You know, I think he's probably our most consistent run defender all across the defensive line. And, you know, I think, you know, in a perfect world, he'd be the third defensive end. But, you know, he's the starter. And, you know, I can think of worse starting defensive ends the Falcons have had over the last 5 years. One of them.
Yeah, the man he replaced last year.
Yeah. And both two guys that he's replaced that left in last couple of years, and Jamal Anderson and Ray Edwards.
A high draft pick and, you know, a high price free agent. I think Atlanta just basically said, you know what, we don't have to put a huge amount of resources. We've got a starting caliber guy here. I'd love to see what, you know, Mapanga or Massaquoi or any of these guys can really do, because I think they're all talented. Again, if they feel like, and the thing is, I like all these guys. I personally like all these guys. I think they're all going to be very good players. But I think at defensive end, for what they want to do, and to me it looks like they're trying to move back towards a more pure 4-3 this year, just based on who they brought in. Because they brought in OC, they brought in legitimate pass rushing guys, but then they brought in a couple of base ends, like straight up base defensive ends, like Malachi Goodman.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I can't say enough good things about this guy. I think he's going to be a stud. I think he's going to be a star, and I think people completely underrated him. I've been projecting him to the Falcons since probably February or even January, back when I worked at Draft Tech. I had him as a second-round pick to Atlanta, so I didn't think he was going to be – I didn't really think he was going to be that high, but I had him projected to Atlanta just because off the field he's that guy, on the field he's that guy. All he needs is pass rush moves. Get him to work with Chuck Smith, and boom, they're good to go.
Okay. Massaquoi, sorry.
I'm going to say it wrong the entire time. So
Yeah. And I'm going to apologize to Desmond Trufant because I'm going to call him Marcus a whole bunch too. But with Massaquoi, he's the most interesting guy because to me he really kind of could really affect how good the Falcons pass rush. You know, he could be that Robert McClay type of guy who solves, or relatively speaking, solves the Falcons' pass rushing issues, or he could be just another guy, and the Falcons have to go back to the drawing board and either next year or the year after at some point are going to have to, dip into free agency or use a high pick on a pass rusher. But he really intrigues me because when I watched him as a sophomore, I was like, this guy is going to be a beast at the NFL. And then his junior year, I thought he put on a little, he added some weight, and I didn't think he was as explosive that year. And he just kind of looked like a mid-round type of guy, as opposed to, someone with first-round, second-round ability. So to me, it's going to be interesting this season if we see some of that same ability that I saw when he was a sophomore, or if he just kind of, okay,
Just like James Rodgers, though, just like, Pere Jerry, I think he was fighting injuries. Now, I'm just going to lead. I've got one last thing that I'm going to, that I want to talk about. I've been hearing through the grapevine. Now, again, I'm going to preface this with, you guys may not think I have much legitimacy, blah, 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 whatever. I've been hearing through the grapevine that Richard Seymour is waiting for the June 1st, June 2nd, I don't know what the official day is, I think it's June 2nd, for the money to come off from Tyson Clabo to sign with the Falcons. And that he will be signing with the Falcons on one of those days, if not within a week. Because they've got the offer, everything's agreed, they just can't do anything until the cap space is open. Because, he needs at least $4 million.
Really?
I mean, for a year, for Richard Seymour, it's worth it, though. He's a 3-time Super Bowl champion. He can plug up the middle of the defense. You throw him in there in a rotation with Peters, with Babineau. On your 3-down lineman sets, instead of having Vance Walker out there as a 1-tech, you throw in Richard Seymour in there as a 1-tech. And he's, way better. Again, Vance Walker was a very good player for the Falcons last year. Seymour's a better player than Vance Walker. And then next year, you take a high draft pick at defensive tackle, like a Lewis Nix. That is my personal favorite. Now, the defensive ends still kind of suck next year, or suck this year. Just, again, I would be perfectly happy with trading 3 first-round picks for Jadeveon Clowney.
Okay.
He's only the best defensive end prospect since Reggie White.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I wouldn't be against that, I would say.
And South Carolina defensive ends have done the Falcons pretty well in the past. You got John Abraham, you got Cliff Matthews, who for a 7th-round pick even making the roster is big. He's been on the roster looking like his 3rd-year Cohen. He's gotten a couple of sacks. He's produced more than any other 7th-round pick around him. Again, I like to look at guys based on who was picked around them. And in the 2011 NFL Draft, the guys who were picked after Cliff Matthews, just scrolling down here for a second.
Who you got?
All right. Frank Curse did nothing. Baron Batch did nothing. Lawrence Guy did nothing. Let me find somebody who's actually done something. Stanley Havili, a fullback.
Just got traded.
That's what he's known for, is getting traded.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. Nobody's even on their roster anymore. So this whole like, oh my God, we've got to get these great players in every single round and every single pick of every single round. It doesn't happen. So when you can get a guy like Cliff Matthews in the late 7th and have him be the last legitimate pick of that round, the last guy who 2 years later is still on his team, come on now.
Yeah.
People overrate all these draft picks sometimes, and I'm guilty of it too. But we all overrate these draft picks sometimes, and we see guys not even on the roster the next year. Cliff Matthews has made the roster every single year. He's a 2-year veteran at least. The next, going above him, the next legitimate pick was Bruce Miller of the San Francisco 49ers, another fullback.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean, and the thing about Cliff Matthews is, he's not going to be, this Pro Bowl player, but the role that he's asked to do, which is, come in, play the run. He's a high motor guy. He has a little bit of pass rush ability. He's not going to be a guy that's going to get 10 sacks a year, but if he can contribute 2, 3, 4 a year, as the 4th defensive end, that's great. He plays special teams, so you don't feel like you're wasting a roster spot with him because he's going to find a way to contribute. He's a lot like Jason Snelling, another 7th-round pick, where they don't have any great skills, but they can do a lot of different things that make your roster. And, hopefully we can grow his ability and he'll be a major contributor going forward. I kind of like him to Chauncey Davis.
Yeah, that's a great comparison, actually. Like, he comes in, he stops the run, boom, that's all you need. And the thing is, another reason why I think that they're trying to move towards that more traditional 4-3, they asked Cliff Matthews to gain about 10 to 15 pounds to get up to that 270 range. Mm-hmm. They asked Massaquoi to gain about 5 to 10. They asked all these guys to get a little bit bigger. They want Malachi Goodman around 295, which on his frame, to be fair, would make him look like a defensive tackle in the mold of Jonathan Babineau. Mm-hmm. And I think that is kind of what they want out of Malachi Goodman long term.
I'd like to
because his best moves are inside moves, not outside moves.
He's a speed guy.
He's a speed guy as a 3-tech, but he's got the power to play the 3-tech. Mm-hmm. So adding 10 pounds for him would be nothing. He's already 285. He's not a small guy.
I think he got down to 275 so he could run a faster 40. So,
he did, but that's not his strong suit.
Yeah.
He's not he's a defensive end. He's not running 40 yards down the field. Mm-hmm. I think that's what people don't realize. Like, when they talk about defensive ends and their 40 times, I don't care about that. I care about their 10-yard split. How fast can they run 10 yards right in front of their face? Because Jonathan Babineau, he only runs a 4.86, according to his combine. Malachi Goodman only ran a 4.87, but they ran identical 165, 10-yard splits. Identical. You know, they're both 295, 285 pounds, you know. I think Goodman long-term, remember how before the draft you and I were arguing on Twitter about who is the next John Babineau?
Mm-hmm.
I think we've got him. I think we've got him, and I think he's Goodman. Because Goodman's also a little bit more laterally agile than Babineau, too. Because he's got that 7.1 3-cone drill. He's also got a better shuttle than Babineau had. Because Babineau only had a 7.71. That's why he could never play outside. I think Goodman was also brought in for those 3 down lineman sets. When they want to run the 3-4, they could have Goodman in there. They could have Babineau in there. They could have Jerry in there. They could have Peters in there. They could rotate different guys in and out. Mm-hmm. I'd love to see what Travian Robertson could do as a nose tackle in that scheme.
Yeah.
Obviously, one tech.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the defensive line rotation works out in camp, because there's going to be a lot of interesting battles there. You know, they have 6 guys at defensive end that, you know, they've drafted or signed as free agents that legitimately can make the roster, but they traditionally only get 5. So, you know, are they going to keep an extra guy? Are they going to, who's going to lose out? You know, they have the defensive tackles. You have Robertson. You have McConnell Regis, who had a good summer last year. So, you know, the battle, you know, the only thing that we can say for certain is Babineau's going to start, OC's going to start. What else? You know, probably Peters is probably also going to start, so that's probably pretty certain. But
I think this is the first year that we finally see a legitimate Pere Jerry cut watch.
Okay, yeah. I think that's probably true, too.
Especially if they sign Richard Seymour, like I'm hearing. You know,
yeah.
it makes too much sense. I think Pere Jerry getting cut, if they bring in Seymour, is pretty much a given at that point. Because he's the fourth he's the 4th best defensive tackle at that point. But is he worth a $500,000 difference over Travian Robertson? I'd say Robertson was better than Jerry last year.
I would agree.
And I'd say going forward, Robertson's going to be better than Jerry because Robertson's only 23 and Jerry's 29. He's capped. Yeah. You know, he is what he is. And that's all he's ever going to be.
You know, barring him having, you know, one of the best summers we've seen a Falcon player have. Yeah, you know, I think he's as good as gone.
You know,
if they get Seymour, and he's done.
And even though Seymour, if I told you he was 34 years old, would that sound young to you? Because I feel like he's been playing forever, but he's only 34 years old. And he's been playing for 13 years. He's younger than John Abraham by like 2 years, and he's been playing a year longer. It's ridiculous. I would never guess that.
Yeah, I guess it probably has to do with the fact that you know, he came in right away and was good. So it seems like, you know, a lot of guys kind of fly under the radar for a year or two. But he came in right away and was one of the best players on that Patriot defense, along with Asante Samuel. And it does seem like he's been around for a long time.
Yeah, he's only 33 years old. And he's been around forever. He's a 7-time Pro Bowler.
Future Hall of Famer.
Yeah, definitely. 5-time all. Yeah, this guy's a future Hall of Famer. If Atlanta brings him in, after already bringing in Steven Jackson and O.C. Menioria, you know, they're basically saying, we want this championship. We want this now. And it wouldn't shock me if Seymour comes right in, you know, doesn't just come into play, comes in to start. Maybe not start. I think Peters would still start. I think Seymour would come in as that third rotational guy, but it wouldn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
But both guys, I mean, Atlanta basically runs a rotation of their entire defensive line, their entire entire defensive line, their entire linebacking core. They run different rotations. So I feel like bringing in a guy like Seymour for that rotation would be ridiculously good because he can play both the 1 and the 3, with no issues of gaining weight, gaining quickness. Like, he can play the 1 and the 3. He wouldn't have to be relied on to be the guy as a pass rusher, but he could still bring in 3-4 sacks in the middle of the defense. I think Peters could get 3 or 4 sacks in that kind of situation. I think Babineau could explode for him and get 6 or 7 sacks.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're getting about 15 sacks from 3 guys like that, that's an explosion in the middle of the defense that needs to happen for the guys on the outside to get their cleanup sacks. Because if they're exploding like that, you've got you're going to have Bierman get some coverage sacks and some pressure sacks like that. You're going to have Massaquoi get some cleanup sacks. You're going to have, Matthews get a couple of sacks like that. You're going to have OC probably contribute to the pressure. So interior pressure begets better pressure on the outside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think with Seymour, I think Babineau is a player that could definitely benefit from his presence because, I think Babineau has had the unfortunate pleasure of having to pull double duty with the Falcons, with, how much they depend on him to be that sort of disruptor against the run, as opposed to kind of being more of a guy at this point in his career. You kind of want to, limit his snaps to try to keep him fresher so he could be more potent as a pass rusher. Because I think one of the reasons why the Falcons pass rush has struggled in their interior pressure is a lot had to do with Babineau kind of wearing down over the season because of how many snaps he has to play because they haven't been able to get great production from backups like Jerry and among others over the last few years.
Of course. But again, this all just sounds like a pipe dream right now. I'm just hoping that it's true. Again, when you hear things from people and you share them and people are like, oh, you're not legitimate, we're hoping that they're true too. I'm hoping that both these guys aren't blowing smoke up my ass because I always doubly confirm a source and doubly confirm everything I hear before I even put it out there. I hear it from at least 2 or 3 different people that have no connection to each other before I put it out there. Because I want to make sure that I've got at least some sort of double check.
Well, I think people appreciate that, Scott.
Yeah, but I mean, if it doesn't happen, maybe somebody came in with a better offer. But that doesn't mean that it's not the plan right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that it's going to happen. I think long term, that's the right move. Long and short term. Even if they sign like a 3-year deal for Seymour, if he's got 3 years left in him, bring him in for 3 years, restructure Babineau for 3 years, restructure Peters for 3 years, and have all 3 of those guys just be a long-term unit in the middle, because I feel like those 3 guys would complement each other extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that's all I've got for this week. Do you have any extra kind of topics you wanted to talk about for this week?
No, I think we'll save it all for next week. We'll have a jam-packed show.
That works for me. Yes.
You can find us on Twitter. I'm at FalcFans. Scott, your Twitter handle is?
I'm at Scott Carasik, and then we've also got a Twitter handle for the show, which is at Falcons PFC. And then I wanted to thank Asante Samuel one last time for coming on the show. Again, his Twitter handle is @pick_622. He's awesome. You know, I'd love to get him on again. I'd love to get pretty much any Falcon on, but...
All right. Well, Asante was a great guest. We'll have some more thoughtful insight on the Falcons and upcoming shows, and hopefully we'll have some other great guests to share with the listeners.
Thanks for tuning in to Falcons Central. For Falcons news, blogs, stats, highlights, and more, log on to ProFootballCentral.com.